Candidate for governor Chris Doughty is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. The Republican from Brentham has quite a hill to climb to reach the corner office. Can he overcome name recognition, the state GOP, the Democratic Party war chest? The candidate is in the chair. He's here to make his case this morning. Let's go on the record.
WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. It's great to have you with us this morning, and we're pleased to have Chris Doughty with us this morning in the chair. He is a Republican candidate for governor, resident of Wrentham, successful entrepreneur, growing Capstan Industries into a multinational manufacturer. He's a graduate of Brigham Young University. He holds an MBA from Harvard Business School. It's great to see you, Chris. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks for being here. So you're one of two candidates in the GOP running for governor. What makes you a better candidate than Geoff Diehl?
Well, I've created jobs. I've been doing it for 3 decades here. I'm very comfortable with budgets and the complexities. After all, it's the executive branch, and we look for executives to run the executive branch. And it's a large, complex organization. It's a $50 billion budget, 44,000 employees. And so I think as citizens, we look for someone with that kind of experience to run the executive branch of government.
Is Geoff Diehl's tight allegiance to Donald Trump going to be an issue, or should it be an issue?
Well, you know, all the candidates will have to make their own pitch for why we should choose them as the candidate. I think for me, you know, what I would like to focus on is affordability. We have seen that in all aspects of our state, that we've just become so expensive to live here. You know, it's happened to my own children where they just couldn't afford to live in our state. I feel it among the citizens, and frankly, as a business owner, I really have felt just how expensive it is to operate a business here.
But how did Donald Trump do as president? Did he make things more affordable? Do you think he did a good job?
I think he had some policies that were really beneficial for our state. If I could highlight a few of them, one is on the Chinese trade practices. I saw so many of our customers, and we make auto parts, so many of our customers that were just being impacted by the unfair trade practices of the Chinese. And I was grateful that President Trump stood up to the Chinese. I can tell you that shipping to China is impossible, but buying and receiving in from China is simple.
So if he ran for president again, would you vote for him?
You know, typically I always vote along the party lines.
So if he's the candidate, you'd vote for him?
Typically I would, yes.
So let's talk about the person who's currently in the corner office. Have you reached out to Governor Baker for his endorsement?
You know, when I was studying and analyzing whether to get into the race, I talked to hundreds of people, which included Governor Baker. And we met and talked about it, and talked about the state of you know, how our state is, and also the opportunities and what the state needed for a governor.
But did you ask for an endorsement? Do you want his endorsement?
I didn't ask him for an endorsement at that time.
How important do you think that might be? As Janet mentioned, you have a primary, and then if you survive the primary, you go to the general. So how important would it be to have his endorsement?
I would like to have everyone's endorsement, including Governor Baker. There's not an endorsement I wouldn't like to have in this, you know, from all corners of the state.
Why not ask him for it then?
What's that?
Why not ask him for it then?
Well, it's still early in the cycle, and there's still a primary, and there's a time for those things.
Has Jim Lyons, the head of the GOP, the state party, has he been helpful at all for you?
He has, yeah. So Jim's been very supportive. I think he's been grateful that there is a primary, so we get some press and we get a debate and we get to share the conservative message.
You've raised some money, but mostly you're self-financed so far. You've put almost $600,000 of your own money into the campaign. Do you think you can raise the same amount of money, or at least close to that, from supporters by primary day, or do you expect that, for the most part, at least in this first part before the primary, it's going to be a self-financed venture?
I think it's a little bit of both. I didn't have the name ID. I was new to the field, and so I knew I'd have to self-finance for a while just to get out there and get our message out there. But I really do believe that when people start to hear the message, when people start to think about going to a single-party state, I think there will be people that will come in and support. We're already beginning to see the beginnings of a lot of support. I don't think the citizens want to go to a single-party state. I know a lot in the press are saying that they think that's what the citizens want, but I'm out in the field every day, and I'm not feeling that. I think they like having two parties in the
Well,
state
and
house.
Massachusetts historically is elects Republican governors. It just happens in the state.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a reason for that to change.
Are you ready to pump in more of your own money into the campaign if it's necessary between now and primary day?
I would, certainly, if it was needed. I have felt a greater urgency in my campaign than I did initially. I thought we could make a difference, but now I feel in our state that there really is a need for some balance in the State House. I think the legislature is starting to lean further left. If there's ever a need and a time for a strong conservative Republican to hold back tax increases, it's now.
And so if you are a governor, you talk about, is it fair to say you talk about pumping more money into education, particularly early childhood education? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
That you would like to do that?
I worry about education probably now more than any other time in my life. Is as a father and as a grandfather, I really have come to appreciate the importance of education and early childhood education.
To that point, what about universal daycare? Do you support state-funded universal daycare?
You know, when it comes to the budget, the state budget, I don't want to raise taxes. And I have a commitment in my heart and my soul to hold the line on taxes, so we have to be careful on the budget. Right now, a lot of our funding is coming from the federal government. So a question is, how much more funding will the federal government keep giving us? And so we need a governor that is really good with budgeting, because there's headwinds coming. If the federal government reduces, imagine interest rates go up. Our state has a lot of debt, and what are we going to do about paying our debt off? So I think there's some headwinds.
So state-funded daycare is expensive. I mean, it's roughly what, $30,000 a head. So I understand where you're coming from. Is there a place to maneuver to find more education money within the budget system?
I've spent a lot of time studying the finances. We have some immediate issues we're going to have to address. The MBTA right now is losing a lot of money. The next governor is going to have to deal with that. I worry about interest rates and the impact on our state. So it's going to require a governor that's very comfortable getting by with limited resources and accomplishing a lot. Now, in the private sector, that's where I come from, is accomplishing a lot with just not enough resources.
Yeah.
But to sort of summarize, yes on more money for early education, but not necessarily universal health care, or I mean child care.
Yeah, if the budget has room for it. There's so many needs in our state. I'll tell you what I see is that not enough money is going out to the communities, to the schools and the education and the police, and out kind of getting spread out. I think as governor, I would really ask a lot of questions. Why are we using so much of the state budget just on state programs and not going out to the communities?
I want to talk a little bit about something that's affected everyone's everyday life for the last 2 years. You said that you don't like the word mandates. So did Governor Baker do the wrong thing by mandating vaccines for all executive branch workers? And that, of course, includes the state police, who are still fighting it right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm not here to criticize anyone. I'm an executive myself, and it was hard to make those decisions, and you did the best you could. Remember?
Would you do that? Would you mandate vaccines?
Well, again, the idea of mandates I don't like, because it feels very like the government is stepping into people's lives. But I think in a pandemic, there are times where you need to kind of have a stronger hand. So,
And what about mandates for planes? You know, they're about to lift them in a couple of weeks here. Do you think that the mandates for airplanes was correct? And would you continue wearing a mask on a plane after the mandate is lifted?
I personally wouldn't wear a mask after the mandate is lifted. And, you know, the hope is that we elect, and that we elect people that are reasonable and can look at the pros and the cons of each of these decisions and not be intrusive, but also protective of the citizens. And finding the right balance requires wisdom, experience, some judgment.
So were the mandates for planes necessary?
I think they were probably helpful.